The thing nobody records is what a place sounded like. We have photographs of 1945 in enormous quantity, films, newsreels, written descriptions of nearly everything. What we very largely do not have is the ordinary background noise of an American day, because nobody thought to capture the sound of nothing much happening. I have spent years reading what that period left behind, and the sounds turn up sideways. In complaints to town councils, in advertisements promising quiet, in letters where somebody mentions, in passing, that they heard the whistle and knew it was 6:30. 12 of them today, all of them daily, all of them gone. The last one on this list is not a sound at all. It is what was underneath all the others, and it has disappeared more completely than anything else on this list. Let us begin. A word about why sound changed, because it is not simply that things got quieter. In many respects, they got louder. What changed is the character of it. The sounds of 1945 were mostly mechanical, intermittent, and meaningful. A whistle meant a specific time. A bell meant a specific event. Machinery made a noise when it was working and stopped when it was not. What we have now is largely continuous and largely meaningless. Traffic, ventilation, refrigeration, and the electrical hum of a house full of things that are never entirely off. So the change is not volume. It is that sound used to carry information, and now mostly it does not. Number 12. Bottles on the step. Glass on concrete before 6 in the morning every day. The milkman set full bottles down and picked empties up, and the sound of glass touching stone, then glass touching glass in a crate, then a van pulling away, was the first thing a great many Americans heard each morning. It was reliable enough that people used it. If you heard it, you had slept in. If you had not heard it yet, there was time. Households complained about it in the way people complain about a thing they would miss, and the complaints appear in local papers periodically through the period. Glass went to cardboard, delivery went to the supermarket, and the sound went from millions of American doorsteps within about 20 years. Number 11. A room full of typewriters. An office in 1945 was extraordinarily loud, and the noise was made almost entirely by people writing. Manual typewriters, dozens of them in a room, each one a series of mechanical impacts, plus the bell at the end of every line and the slam of the carriage return. A large typing pool was genuinely difficult to hold a conversation in. That noise was also a measure of productivity, and supervisors listened to it. A room that went quiet was a room that had stopped working, and everybody in it knew that. Electric typewriters softened it. Computers removed it entirely. An office now is one of the quietest workplaces in existence, and the transition happened inside about 30 years. Number 10. The cash register. A mechanical machine operated by pressing keys with real resistance, and every transaction produced the same sequence. The keys, the mechanism turning over, a bell, and the drawer springing open with a bang. It was loud on purpose. The bell existed so that the owner, anywhere in the shop, knew a sale had been rung up, which was as much an anti-theft measure as anything else. A busy shop on a Saturday was a continuous percussion of registers. Electronic tills replaced the mechanism with a beep, and then card payment removed even the drawer. The sound that meant money changing hands in America for the better part of a century simply is not made anymore. Number 9. Bells on the hour. Church bells and town clocks, and in a great many places, both. They rang the hours, and they rang for services, and they rang for funerals. And in small towns, the pattern of a funeral bell told you things about who had died. There were conventions to it that everybody in the town understood without being taught. This was, importantly, how people knew the time. Wristwatches were common by 1945 and not universal, and a bell audible across a whole town told everybody at once. Clocks stopped being wound. Congregations shrank. Neighbors complained. And most American towns now go a full day without a bell being rung for any reason. Number 8. The locomotive whistle. Steam, and it is a completely different sound from a modern train horn. A steam whistle is breathy and layered, and it carries an extraordinary distance across open country, particularly at night. Every town on a line heard it several times a day, and people knew the schedule by it. A whistle at a certain hour meant a certain train, and an unexpected one meant something was wrong. There was also a language to it. Sequences of long and short blasts meant specific things, and railroad men and people living near the line could read them. Diesel replaced steam through the 50s. The horn is louder and carries less atmosphere, and the particular sound that defined the American night for a century stopped being made outside of preservation railways. Number 7. Coal going down the chute. A truck outside, a metal chute through a basement window, and a ton of coal going down it in a sustained, rattling roar that lasted a minute or two and could be heard through the whole house and by the neighbors. It happened several times a winter for any household heating with coal, which was most of them in the northern cities. Everybody on the street knew when somebody had taken delivery, which was a small piece of public information about a household's circumstances that nobody had to announce. Oil and then gas heating removed it. The chute openings are still visible in the foundations of a great many older American houses, bricked up, and most people who live in those houses have never wondered what they were. Number 6. The party line. Several households sharing a single telephone line, which was normal across rural America and in a good deal of the rest of it. The telephone rang in every house on the line, every time, for anybody. What told you whether it was for you was the pattern. 2 long rings and a short, 3 shorts. Every household had its own signal, and everybody memorized all of them, which meant everybody knew who was getting a call and how often, and it was entirely possible to lift the receiver and listen, and a great many people did. Party lines persisted into the 70s in rural areas. The sound of a telephone ringing in your house for somebody else is a genuinely strange thing to explain to anybody who did not live with it. Number 5. The rotary dial. The mechanical clatter of a dial returning, and the number of clicks told a listener in the room exactly which digit had been dialed. Making a call took real time. A number with several high digits took noticeably longer than one with low digits, and people in the same room heard the whole thing. There was also the operator, and in a great many places you did not dial at all, but spoke to a person and asked for a number or a name. Tone dialing replaced the clicks with beeps, and then mobiles removed the sound entirely. Dialing is now silent, which is why nobody in a house knows anymore that somebody else is making a call. Number 4. Horses. Still. Fewer than a generation earlier, and by no means gone. Milk, bread, ice, and rag collection were still horse-drawn in a great many American cities in 1945, particularly for stop-start delivery routes, where a horse that knows the round is genuinely more efficient than a truck. So the sound of iron shoes on paved street was still an ordinary morning sound in urban America, along with the harness and the cart. It went through the 50s quite quickly, and it went so completely that the sound now reads as historical costume drama, rather than as something a person born in 1940 would have heard on the way to school. Number 3. Everybody listening to the same thing. Radio in 1945 was a shared national event in a way nothing since has quite been, which produced a very particular sound. Walk down a street on an evening when something was on, and you heard the same program through every open window, slightly out of phase with itself, continuing without interruption as you walked. People describe this repeatedly in accounts of the period, particularly around the war news. You could stay with a broadcast for the length of a street without owning a radio. Television concentrated listening back indoors and behind glass. Then, choice fragmented it entirely. There is no longer any program in America that is on in enough houses at once to produce that effect. Number 2. The factory whistle. A whistle that governed a town. It sounded the start of the shift, the break, the end, and everybody within earshot arranged their day by it, including people who did not work at the factory. Households cooked to it. Schools let out around it. In a single industry town, it was, functionally, the town clock, and it was set by whoever owned the plant. What is worth noticing is that it was audible to everybody, which meant the rhythm of industrial work was imposed on the whole community rather than just the workforce. Deindustrialization silenced most of them, and in a great many American towns, the day the whistle stopped is remembered with some precision, because it meant something rather larger than a noise ending. Number 1. Quiet. And here is the one I mentioned at the start. Underneath every sound on this list, there was a background that was genuinely, properly silent, and that is the thing that has gone. No traffic hum, because there were far fewer vehicles and they were not running through the night. No aircraft overhead, or very few. No refrigeration cycling. No ventilation. No electronics of any kind in the house, humming quietly in standby, because the concept did not exist. At night, in a small town or in the country, there was nothing. People who remember it describe being able to hear a car coming from a very long way off, or a conversation across a field, or a dog several farms away. And they describe, more often, the sensation of a silence that was total, which is now essentially unavailable in the inhabited United States without deliberate effort. That is the largest change on this list, and it is the one nobody noticed happening because it did not arrive. It accumulated. 12 then, and every one of them ordinary. I am not going to tell you it sounded better. A good deal of it was intrusive. Some of it was genuinely unpleasant. And a factory whistle owning your morning is not a thing anybody should be nostalgic about. But nearly all of it meant something. A bell told you the hour. A whistle told you the shift. A pattern of rings told you the call was for the Hendersons. Sound carried information, and a person moving through an ordinary day was reading it constantly without thinking about it. That is what keeps turning up sideways in the record. Not nostalgia. Just a very long list of noises that used to say something. I am Harlan Fenwick. The almanac continues.